The breaking point. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood at the viewport of her stealth ship, watching the massive structures of the Hegemony Empire's capital world grow larger against the star-filled darkness. The planet Dominax Prime stretched before them, its surface covered in gleaming towers that reached toward the clouds like metallic fingers grasping at the heavens. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. Lieutenant Chen monitored their cloaking systems, while Sergeant Williams checked their weapons for the 100th time. They all knew this mission would likely be their last. The Terran Coalition had sent them here with one purpose: deliver humanity's final message to the Empire that had crushed their worlds beneath its iron fist for decades. Maya's dark eyes reflected the distant glow of the alien capital. She had seen too much in her 35 years. Her home colony of New Geneva had been strip-mined by hegemony machines when she was just 16. Millions of humans had been relocated to cramped orbital stations, while their beautiful world was transformed into an industrial wasteland. The Empire called it progress. Maya called it murder. "Captain," Chen whispered from his station, "we're approaching the outer sensor grid. Their detection systems are more advanced than our intelligence suggested." Maya turned from the viewport, her jaw set with determination. "Can we get through?" "Maybe. But if they spot us, we'll have half the Imperial fleet hunting us down within minutes." "Then we better make sure they don't spot us." Maya moved to her command chair, feeling the weight of her mission pressing down on her shoulders. "Take us in, Lieutenant. Humanity is depending on us." The sleek Terran vessel slipped through space like a shadow, its advanced stealth technology bending light and sensor waves around its hull. The ship represented years of secret research, a project hidden from the Empire's watchful eyes in the asteroid mines of the Outer Rim. While the hegemony believed humans were nothing more than useful laborers, the brightest minds of Earth had been working in the darkness, preparing for this moment. As they descended through Dominax Prime's atmosphere, Maya reviewed the intelligence files one more time. Emperor Zalthak ruled the hegemony with absolute authority, his serpentine species having conquered dozens of worlds over the past century. The Kethvar were natural predators, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales that shifted color based on their emotions and 4 powerful arms ending in razor-sharp claws. They saw other species as either tools to be used or obstacles to be removed. "Captain, we're picking up massive energy readings from the capital," Williams reported, his scarred hands dancing across his tactical display. "The Imperial Senate is in session. This could be our chance." Maya nodded. The Imperial Senate was mostly for show, filled with puppet representatives from conquered worlds who rubber-stamped whatever the Emperor demanded. But it was also where Zalthak made his grand pronouncements, surrounded by the Empire's most powerful figures. If humanity was going to deliver its ultimatum, there could be no better stage. Their ship touched down in an abandoned industrial sector on the outskirts of the capital city. The area had been evacuated years ago to make room for expanded Imperial facilities, leaving behind empty warehouses and rusted machinery. It was the perfect place to hide their vessel and make their approach on foot. Maya checked her equipment one final time. Hidden beneath her diplomatic robes was a combat suit designed to enhance her natural abilities. In her hand, she carried a data crystal containing humanity's message, along with something else that would soon shock the MP to its core. The other members of her team carried similar gear, their faces grim with the knowledge of what lay ahead. The capital city of Dominax Prime was a monument to imperial power. Towering spires of black metal and crimson glass stretched toward the sky, connected by bridges that carried hover vehicles filled with alien dignitaries and imperial officials. The streets below teemed with representatives from dozens of conquered species, all of them wearing the subdued expressions of the oppressed. Maya's team moved through the crowds with practiced ease, their forged identification documents getting them past security checkpoints staffed by bored Kethvar guards. The Empire's arrogance worked in their favor. Who would dare attempt an infiltration of the most heavily defended world in the galaxy? As they approached the Imperial Senate building, Maya felt her heart rate increase. The structure was massive, a crystalline dome that seemed to pulse with inner light. Thousands of beings moved in and out of its entrances, but Maya knew that only the most important session attendees were allowed into the main chamber where Emperor Zalthak held court. Remember, she whispered to her team as they approached the final checkpoint, we're cultural attachés from the Centauri colonies, here to present a ceremonial gift to the Emperor. Stay calm, follow my lead, and whatever happens, make sure the message gets delivered. The guards at the entrance were massive Kethvar warriors, their scales showing the deep purple of alertness. They examined the team's credentials with suspicious eyes, their forked tongues tasting the air for signs of deception. Maya forced herself to remain still as one of the guards leaned close enough for her to smell his sulphurous breath. "Purpose of visit?" the guard hissed, his voice like grinding metal. "We bring greetings from the loyal humans of the Centauri system," Maya replied smoothly, holding up an ornate box that supposedly contained their ceremonial gift. "Our colonial governor wishes to express his continued devotion to His Imperial Majesty." The guard's scale shifted to a lighter shade as he lost interest. Humans were considered beneath notice, useful only for their ability to work in conditions that would kill most other species. After a perfunctory scan of their belongings, the team was waved through. The interior of the Imperial Senate was breathtaking in its opulence. The main chamber was a vast circular space with tiers of seats rising toward a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time view of the stars above. At the center of it all sat Emperor Zalthak on his throne, a massive chair carved from a single piece of black crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Emperor himself was an imposing figure, even among his own species. His scales were deep crimson shot through with veins of gold, marking him as a member of the royal bloodline. His 4 arms were adorned with rings and bracers that pulsed with energy, while his serpentine head bore a crown of living metal that moved and shifted like liquid mercury. Maya and her team took their assigned seats in the section reserved for minor dignitaries, waiting for the right moment to act. The current speaker was a trembling representative from some distant world, pleading for reduced tribute payments due to a recent natural disaster. Emperor Zalthak listened with obvious boredom, his tail lashing back and forth with impatience. "Your world's production quota remains unchanged," the Emperor finally declared, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics. "If your people cannot meet their obligations, perhaps they would prefer to be replaced by a more capable species." The alien representative collapsed to his knees, begging for mercy that would never come. Maya felt her anger burn hotter as she watched the display. This was what the Empire called justice. This was the order they had imposed on half the galaxy. The session continued with more reports from conquered worlds, each one painting a picture of exploitation and oppression. Maya waited patiently, knowing that her moment would come. Finally, Emperor Zalthak called for new business, and she saw her chance. Standing from her seat, Maya activated the voice amplification device hidden in her robes. "Your Imperial Majesty," she called out, her voice carrying through the vast chamber, "I bring a message from the people of Earth." A ripple of surprise ran through the assembled delegates. The Emperor's head turned toward her, his golden eyes narrowing with interest. It was rare for humans to speak out of turn in the Imperial Senate, and rarer still for them to draw attention to themselves. "Approach," Zalthak commanded, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Maya walked down the steps toward the center of the chamber, feeling thousands of alien eyes upon her. Her team remained seated, but she could sense their tension. Everything depended on the next few minutes. She stopped at the designated speaking circle and bowed slightly, showing just enough respect to avoid immediate punishment while maintaining her dignity. "Your Imperial Majesty, I am Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Terran Coalition. I come before you today not as a subject but as a messenger." The Emperor's scales darkened to a deep burgundy, a sign of growing anger. "You are claimed to represent more than your assigned colonial government?" "I represent every human being who has suffered under imperial rule," Maya replied, her voice steady and strong. "Every child torn from their family to work in your mines. Every world stripped bare to feed your endless hunger. Every life sacrificed on the altar of your ambition." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several Kethvar guards began moving toward Maya, but the Emperor raised one of his 4 hands to stop them. He was curious now, intrigued by this human's unusual boldness. Maya reached into her robes and produced the data crystal, holding it up for all to see. This crystal contains a message from the Terran Coalition to the Hegemony Empire, a final warning that your reign of terror is about to end. Emperor Zalthak's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. A warning? From a species that barely qualifies as sentient? You amuse me, human. Deliver your message, and then we shall discuss the price of your insolence. Maya activated the crystal, and a holographic display materialized above her head. The image showed Admiral Sarah Chen, the highest-ranking human officer in what remained of Earth's military. The Admiral's weathered face was set in stern lines as she began to speak. Emperor Zalthak and the rulers of the Hegemony Empire, Chen's recorded voice rang out through the chamber. For 50 years, humanity has endured your tyranny. We have watched as you enslaved entire populations, destroyed countless worlds, and spread suffering across the galaxy. Today that ends. The hologram continued as whispers of disbelief spread through the audience. You have dismissed humanity as primitive, weak, and divided. You have underestimated our capacity for adaptation, our talent for innovation, and our willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom. That was your first mistake. Maya watched Emperor Zalthak's expression change from amusement to confusion to the first hints of concern. The Admiral's message continued, revealing classified information about Imperial military positions, secret weapons projects, and strategic vulnerabilities that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. We have spent decades preparing for this moment, Admiral Chen declared. While you celebrated your victories, we studied your weaknesses. While you expanded your empire, we developed new technologies that will level the playing field. While you grew complacent, we grew stronger. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the implications became clear. Somehow, humanity had been conducting intelligence operations on a scale that dwarfed anything the Empire had imagined possible. Emperor Zalthak rose from his throne, his massive form towering over the assembly. His scales had shifted to deep purple, almost black, indicating extreme agitation. This is impossible. Your species lacks the capability for such operations. Maya smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt truly confident. Your Imperial Majesty, you have made the same mistake that countless tyrants before you have made. You assumed that because we serve, we submit, because we obey, we accept, because we endure, we will continue to do so forever. The hologram began its final phase, showing images of human colonies that the Empire believed were completely under their control. But these were not the broken, subjugated populations that Imperial records described. Instead, the images showed hidden shipyards, advanced research facilities, and military installations that had been constructed right under the Empire's nose. We offer you one chance, Admiral Chen's message concluded. Withdraw from all human worlds immediately. Release every human being held in Imperial custody. Recognize the independence of the Terran Coalition. You have 72 standard hours to comply. Emperor Zalthak's roar of rage shook the entire chamber. You threaten me? The ruler of 1,000 worlds? I could obliterate your pathetic species with a thought. Maya's smile widened. You could try, Your Imperial Majesty, but first you might want to check on your outer defense perimeter. As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the capital. The chamber's star display showed dozens of unidentified contacts appearing at the edge of the system, ships that had somehow bypassed the Empire's most advanced sensor networks. The Emperor's communication officer rushed to his side, whispering urgently in his ear. Maya watched as Zalthak's expression shifted from rage to disbelief to something she had never seen before in a Kethvar's face. Fear. Impossible, the Emperor whispered, but his voice carried through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Maya began backing toward the exit, her team rising from their seats to join her. 72 hours, Your Imperial Majesty. After that, the Terran Coalition will demonstrate exactly what happens when humanity says enough. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates scrambled to contact their homeworlds and Imperial officers shouted orders at subordinates. In the confusion, Maya and her team slipped away, disappearing into the panicking crowds that filled the capital's streets. As they made their way back to their hidden ship, Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The message had been delivered, the gauntlet throw, and down. Now came the hard part, proving that humanity's threats were more than just empty words. But as explosions lit up the night sky above Dominax Prime, marking the first strikes of what would become known as the Liberation War, Maya knew that her people were ready. They had been preparing for this moment for decades, and now the galaxy would learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The Empire had dismissed them as primitive and weak. Soon, they would discover just how wrong they had been. The storm unleashed. Emperor Zalthak stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the holographic displays with growing disbelief. The massive dreadnought's bridge buzzed with activity as Imperial officers tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Reports poured in from across the galaxy, each one more impossible than the last. "Status report," the Emperor commanded, his forearms gripping the command rail with enough force to crack the reinforced metal. General Vextar, his chief military advisor, approached with obvious reluctance. The Kethvar warrior's scales had faded to a sickly gray color that indicated extreme stress. "Your Imperial Majesty, we're receiving reports of simultaneous attacks on 17 core worlds. The human fleets appeared without warning, bypassing our sensor networks entirely." Zalthak's serpentine head swayed back and forth, a gesture of negation that his species used when faced with unacceptable information. "How many ships are we talking about? A few dozen stolen vessels? Some converted mining equipment?" "No, Your Majesty." Vextar's voice was barely above a whisper. "Long-range scans indicate hundreds of vessels, possibly thousands. And they're not using any technology we recognize. Our weapons are barely scratching their hulls." The Emperor's roar of fury echoed through the bridge, causing several junior officers to collapse in terror. In 50 years of conquest, nothing had ever challenged the Empire's military supremacy. The very idea that the humans, those weak, short-lived creatures good only for manual labor, could pose a threat was beyond comprehension. "Mobilize everything," Zalthak snarled. "Every ship, every warrior, every weapon in the Imperial arsenal. I want these human insects crushed so thoroughly that no species will ever again dare to defy the hegemony empire." While the Emperor raged on his flagship, Captain Maya Rodriguez was experiencing the moment she had dreamed of for 20 years. Her stealth ship had escaped from Dominax Prime and now floated in the shadow of an asteroid field, giving her a perfect view of the human fleet that had emerged from hyperspace. The sight took her breath away. Sleek vessels unlike anything in the Imperial Navy hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy fields that bent light around them. These were not the crude, hastily converted ships that the Empire expected from humanity. These were works of art, masterpieces of engineering that represented decades of secret development. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen called from his station, his voice filled with awe, "I'm receiving a transmission from the fleet commander." "Put it through." Admiral Sarah Chen's weathered face appeared on the main display, but now she wore the crisp uniform of the Terran Coalition Navy, instead of the simple clothes she had worn in the recorded message. Behind her, Maya could see the bridge of what had to be the most advanced warship ever constructed. "Captain Rodriguez," the Admiral said with a slight smile, "congratulations on a successful mission. I trust the Emperor received our message." "He did, Admiral, along with a demonstration that got his attention. How long until we begin the main assault?" "Phase 1 is already underway. Our advanced scouts have been systematically dismantling Imperial sensor networks across the Outer Rim. The enemy still doesn't know the true scope of what they're facing." Maya leaned forward in her chair, eager to finally understand the full scope of humanity's secret preparations. "Admiral, how is this possible? The last intelligence report suggested we had maybe a few hundred operational vessels hidden across all human territories." Admiral Chen's smile widened. "Project Phoenix, Captain. For the past 30 years, while the Empire believed we were mining asteroids and operating research stations, we were actually constructing the most advanced artificial intelligence network in galactic history." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. AI-controlled ships? More than that. AI-designed ships, built by AI-controlled manufacturing systems, using materials processed by AI-guided mining operations. Each vessel in this fleet represents computational power equivalent to the entire Imperial War College. They can think, adapt, and learn at speeds that biological beings simply cannot match. On the tactical display, Maya watched as the human fleet began its advance toward the inner systems. The ships moved with perfect coordination, adjusting their formation in response to Imperial countermeasures before the enemy commanders had even finished giving orders. It was like watching a chess master play against children. Emperor Zalthak was discovering the same thing from the other side. His massive fleet had assembled with impressive speed, over 2,000 vessels ranging from NIMBY, the destroyers, to planet-killing dreadnoughts. Any other enemy would have been overwhelmed by such a display of force. "Contact," the tactical officer announced. "Imperial sensors are picking up the human fleet. Estimated enemy strength." The officer paused, his scales shifting to confused amber as he rechecked his readings. "Report," General Vextar snapped. "Sir, the sensors are showing conflicting data. Long-range scans suggest several hundred vessels, but close-range analysis indicates thousands. It's as if the human ships are shifting their positions faster than our systems can track." Zalthak pushed past his subordinates to examine the tactical display himself. What he saw there challenged everything he thought he knew about space warfare. The human fleet was moving in patterns that should have been impossible, individual ships appearing to be in multiple locations simultaneously while maintaining perfect formation integrity. Some kind of cloaking technology, he decided. Advanced but not insurmountable. Order all ships to fire on any target that appears on sensors. Saturate the entire region with plasma bursts. The Imperial fleet opened fire with devastating force. Thousands of energy beams and missile volleys filled space with brilliant destruction. It was the kind of overwhelming assault that had reduced entire planetary defense fleets to scrap metal. The human response was swift and shocking. Instead of trying to evade the incoming fire, their ships began to dance, not in the crude, predictable patterns that biological pilots used, but in perfect three-dimensional harmonies that turned the space battle into something resembling a deadly ballet. Every shot missed. Every missile found empty space instead of its intended target. The human ships moved with such precision that they seemed to know where each attack would land before the Imperial gunners had even pulled their triggers. "Impossible," Vextar breathed, watching the display in stunned fascination. Then the humans began to return fire, and the impossible became a nightmare. Their weapons were unlike anything in the Imperial arsenal, beams of coherent energy that cut through the strongest armor like paper, missiles that seemed to think for themselves as they sought out the most vulnerable points on enemy hulls. Within minutes, the Imperial fleet's perfect formation had dissolved into chaos. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes as their power cores were precisely targeted. Others found their command systems disabled by weapons that somehow interfaced directly with their computer networks. "Retreat!" Zalthak roared, his pride finally overcome by survival instinct. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions." But even retreat proved impossible. The human ships anticipated every tactical decision, moving to cut off escape routes before the Imperial commanders had even decided which way to run. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration of superior intelligence, systematically dismantling an inferior opponent. Captain Rodriguez watched the engagement from her concealed position, feeling a mixture of triumph and horror. She had wanted the Empire to pay for its crimes, but seeing their mighty fleet torn apart with such casual efficiency was almost frightening. If humanity could do this to the Hegemony Empire, what couldn't they do? "Captain," Chen reported, "we're receiving signals from multiple systems. The Liberation fleets are reporting complete success across all targeted worlds." Maya called up the galactic display and saw the truth of it. Across dozens of star systems, human fleets had appeared as if from nowhere to shatter Imperial strongholds that had seemed invulnerable just hours before. Worlds that had been under alien occupation for decades were suddenly free, their populations emerging from hiding to celebrate their liberation. But the most shocking elopements were occurring on worlds where humans had never been the dominant species. Alien populations that had served the Empire for generations were suddenly rising in revolt, armed with advanced weapons that had somehow appeared from hidden stockpiles. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system, addressing the entire human fleet. "This is Admiral Chen to all coalition forces. Phase 2 is now in effect. We are no longer simply fighting for human freedom. We are fighting for the liberation of every sentient being oppressed by imperial tyranny." The scope of humanity's preparation became clear as the hours passed. Not only had they built the most advanced fleet in galactic history, they had also spent decades infiltrating alien populations, identifying potential allies, and building networks of resistance that spanned hundreds of worlds. On the imperial homeworld of Keth Prime, Emperor Zalthak found himself facing a reality he had never imagined possible. His invincible empire was crumbling, not through conquest by a superior force, but through the systematic exploitation of its own weaknesses by an enemy he had dismissed as insignificant. "Status report from all sectors," he commanded, though part of him no longer wanted to hear the answer. General Vextar consulted his displays with shaking hands. "Your Majesty, we've lost contact with over 60% of our core worlds. The human fleets are advancing on multiple fronts, and their ships continue to outmaneuver everything we send against them. Even worse, native populations are rebelling across the Empire. They have weapons we've never seen before, and they seem to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect." The Emperor slumped in his throne, the weight of impending defeat crushing down on his serpentine form. "How?" he whispered. "How did a primitive species accomplish this?" His answer came from an unexpected source. The main display flickered to life, showing the face of Admiral Chen aboard her flagship. Somehow the humans had managed to hack into the most secure communication systems in the Empire. "Emperor Zalthak," the Admiral said calmly, "I believe you have a question for me." The Emperor's eyes blazed with desperate fury. "What are you?" Chen's expression remained compassionate but implacable. "We are what you made us, Your Imperial Majesty. You took our freedom, so we became freedom fighters. You scattered us across the galaxy, so we learned to work together across impossible distances. You forced us to labor in your factories and mines, so we learned how your technology works. You treated us as disposable tools, so we learned to be resourceful." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Most importantly, you underestimated our capacity for growth. While you remained static, convinced of your own superiority, we evolved. We adapted. We became something new." The Emperor's voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want?" "The same thing we have always wanted, freedom. Not just for humanity, but for every species you have oppressed. The Hegemony Empire ends today, Your Imperial Majesty. What rises in its place will be determined by the choices you make in the next few minutes." On worlds across the galaxy, the revolution continued to spread. The artificial intelligences that guided the human fleets had spent years analyzing imperial control systems, identifying the precise pressure points needed to bring down a galactic empire. Now those plans were being executed with flawless precision. Captain Rodriguez received new orders to proceed to the Centauri system, where one of the Empire's largest shipyards was being liberated by combined human and alien forces. As her ship jumped to hyperspace, she reflected on how completely the balance of power had shifted. Just days before, humanity had been a subject species, barely tolerated by their alien masters. Now they were the architects of galactic liberation, offering hope to billions of oppressed beings across hundreds of worlds. The final act came not with a great battle, but with a simple surrender. Emperor Zalthak, faced with the complete collapse of his empire and the certain destruction of his homeworld, sent out a galaxy-wide transmission officially dissolving the Hegemony Empire and recognizing the independence of all former subject species. As Maya Rodriguez stood once again at the viewport of her ship, watching the celebrations on the worlds below, she realized that humanity had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had not simply won a war, they had fundamentally changed the nature of interstellar civilization. The age of empire was over, the age of cooperation had begun, and at its heart stood humanity, no longer the oppressed but the liberators, proving once and for all that with enough determination, ingenuity, and time, any tyrant could be brought down and any people could be set free. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had intended.